Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Kaunis Kuolematon, Mielenvalta, out October 13th on Noble Demon. The album has 9 tracks, 56 minutes in length, and this is the band's 4th full-length studio album. They are a Finnish doom metal band. When I look at the design of this record, I look at an album that has all the right attributes, not just for the fans of the genre, but those perhaps discovering the band for the first time listening to this album. Sometimes you need to simplify the mechanisms, you need to simplify the way a record comes across so that the listener can quickly connect with it and not necessarily have to peel too many layers. This album has all of those attributes, has all of those mechanisms. From the opening song that has a very extended intro that welcomes you slowly into the record and not really pushing you in or rushing you in, to the closing song that brings the curtains down, every track offers a slightly different variation of the path that you're on from the first to the last. But that variation is important because this is a very immersing sounding record, as their records normally are. But there's also a way that the album has of throwing you a life jacket here and there, and those life jackets allows the album to breathe better and allows you to come up for air. These pockets are crucial in order for you to better understand the record, in order for you to not feel completely subjugated by it, and for you to have some control, or at least a sense of control, over what is happening. The album becomes easier to understand, easier to digest, easier to enjoy when you're not always feeling like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. So you still have a very immersive experience, but you're also able to connect with these areas of the album where the record is a little bit brighter, where the record breathes a little bit better. Great design that allows 9 songs in 56 minutes to feel a lot shorter and to feel a lot more manageable. As far as the sound is concerned, this is still a dark, melancholic, and gloomy record, no shadow of a doubt. But I felt that there were moments of this album where perhaps some sun was coming in and that brightness really shined, either musically, vocally, or even from an atmospheric standpoint. This makes the overall album a lot more richer, a lot more textured, a lot more layered. It doesn't feel like it's one size fits all or one single approach, and now we're just changing the nuances within that approach. This album offers a lot more than just that. It's an album that thinks a little bit deeper, that goes a little bit deeper sound-wise, and it brings elements to the table that definitely create and elevate the quality of the sound, the quality of the experience, and the quality of the atmosphere that it puts forward. One of those elements is definitely the symphonic pieces that are such a big part of this album. Sometimes you notice them more, sometimes they're a little bit more in the forefront, and they're more in the forefront for 2 main purposes. One, to really identify the atmosphere of the track, either be darkness, gloominess, or even a sense of hope, and other times they're there to creating an underlying melody that then leads you to that same atmosphere. It's just not a direct approach. In some other tracks you don't notice as much. A little bit more hidden, a little bit more as a layer, more subjugated to the sound of the guitars and to the sound of the drums. Having this ability to use that element but use it in different perspectives with different volumes allows the songs to have different characteristics, even though the underlying bass is still the same. The red line is still there. So some songs feel a lot bigger, a lot brighter, and then some tracks feel completely claustrophobic or very tight in, almost like a funnel. But the elements are still there. They're just changing the perception of the listener by changing the location in which they show up within the mix. So the symphonic elements, while not driving this record, they definitely have a key component, or they are a key component in the overall texture that the album puts forward and the atmosphere of this same record. Now, one of the elements that I feel like definitely drives this record is the guitar sound. Great guitar sound. At times, super clean, super crisp, easy to understand, easy to see. The clarity that it offers definitely brings some light into that sense of gloominess that is around. But other times, the guitars become a little bit more distorted, the sound becomes a little bit more rough, becomes a little bit more gritty, and it's harder to see the edges, it's harder to see where the sound ends, because the lines become blurry, it's not well defined. using these two elements throughout the record becomes a very nice parallel to what you're going to get vocally on this same album. So you see some duality in this record. You see it from the musical side with the guitars having this conflict, almost conflict of interests, if you will, and then having that same conflict happening vocally. This gives a lot of energy. This gives a lot of life to any record, but specifically for a Doom album, it really elevates it to a different category almost. The drums on the record feel a little bit subjugated, but I think that's just the way they need to be in order for the other two elements to play more of a predominant role, not just in the soundscape, but also in the atmosphere of the record itself. The drums on this album feel powerful at times, feel subjugated at others, but they're always there as the first ingredient, the first brick on this big wall that they build as far as the sound is concerned. I enjoyed the texture. Unlike the guitars, it doesn't really change. The texture is pretty much always the same. All it changes is the volume of the drums and how far they can go before they reach their ceiling. That's pretty much the only movement that the drums offer, but for a record like this, you don't need any other thing to happen as far as the drum sound is concerned. You just need something contained and something consistent so that the other elements could have a little bit more life. Vocally, having two different vocalists with very different deliveries, with very different styles, having those very deep, guttural, harsh vocals, and then these almost tearful, melancholic, clean vocals creates an incredible yin and yang that on this album is matched by that guitar sound that sometimes goes into acoustic guitars and sometimes goes almost into distorted fuzz. So you have that parallel between those two elements, but vocally such a strong album. To me, it's a very divided album as far as which side of those, which vocalist reigns supreme. I don't think either one of them does. I think they play an equal part and they play an equal role in what this album is vocally. What they do is that they help define the moments of heaviness, the moments in which you sink in and are completely immersed by the experience of the album, and then also give you those moments of clarity. Obviously, the clean vocals, because of its own nature, brings clarity with it, but that clarity sometimes has a lot of darkness and melancholy attached to it. The harsh vocals obviously bring aggression, intensity, and heaviness, but because of the sound behind it, sometimes they also bring a lot of melancholy, a lot of sadness, a somber nature to it. It's really interesting how two very different styles of vocals, depending on where they place them with the right sound behind them, sometimes they can offer the exact same thing, and sometimes they can go in two completely different directions. That's one of the elements that makes this album so rich and so dynamic. All around, such a great record to listen to. Normally people say that Doom albums have a sense of repetition or they become a little bit boring because it's always the same feeling, it's always the same sound, it's always the same movement. It's not the case with this record by Kaunis Kuolematon. This album, it's a Doom record still at its core, but it starts to move the needle into a much brighter sound that allows them to do a lot more than perhaps what they've done up to this point. It doesn't break away from the past. It's not a record that resets who they are or redefines their DNA. It's just a record that takes everything that they have done and then they just added a few little pieces here and there in order to make everything a little bit bigger, a little bit better. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I have to start off with the title track, Mielenvalta. Very somber opening, leading you into a more menacing sound, and then that menacing sound leading you into a much bigger sound with a lot more volume, a lot more texture. The clean vocals allow the atmosphere of the sound to remain there. The clean vocals don't take anything away, so the way the sound comes in when the clean vocals hit, that feeling that you're getting, that feeling stays there because the clean vocals almost help enhance it. And then when the harsh vocals come in, the harsh vocals come in with heavier sound behind it. That's how the two are introduced. Both of them are introduced with sound that kind of matches what the delivery is going to be all about. So the emotion and the atmosphere of the sound matches the emotion and the atmosphere of the vocals. It doesn't stay like that throughout the whole record. They do some changing around. They mix those two worlds in order to make the track a little bit more engaging, a little bit more interesting, and also not allowing the song to be predictable. And that is really good because you set the tone with how those two come together, and then you start to see harsher vocals, moving into some cleaner sound, moving away, giving way to heavier sound with a clean vocal still on top of it. That movement makes this track really interesting all around. It gives it a lot of energy as well. I also enjoyed the symphonic elements of this track are really interesting, because the moment they creep in at the beginning, they almost stay there. It's just that they change the volume here and there, sometimes a little bit more noticeable, sometimes a little bit less. Adding female vocals to this track also gives a different element that you're not expecting, but it brings a very unique sense of atmosphere and a very unique sense of melancholy that neither clean or harsh vocals can do. It's a very unique element that sets this song apart from all others around it. Next we have Olet, poissa. Opening this track with acoustic guitars, it's nice because it strips the song down. It allows the vocals to have a little bit more of a predominant role, pushing the song forward. Closing the song with the same acoustic guitars and the same clean vocals, it's perfect because it allows everything, the more dynamic movement that happens in between, it allows to be there, but you still feel like the track goes full circle, and that's exactly what you want from any song that has this sort of beginning to match it with the same style finish. Now, it's a track that gains a little bit more oomph, if you will, because the guitars move in from an acoustic sound to an electric sound. I wouldn't say that they're heavy, but they're a little bit thicker. I think that's a nice way of putting it. And that allows you to see a little bit of a bigger track volume-wise, or a bigger track sound-wise, but never really a song that blows up, or never really a song that just becomes energetic. The stripped down effect that this track has, it kind of stays there. It's kind of always there. Even when the harsh vocals come in, in that moment it feels more of an exteriorization of everything that was building in on the inside. That's perhaps the only pocket where you feel like the track loses a little bit of its shape, loses a little bit of its control. But overall, this is a song, especially because of how it closes and the way that it finishes, a song that always feel like it's very naked, it's very vulnerable in terms of how it comes across. Last but definitely not least, Aallot, super dynamic track. This is one of those that has heaviness, it has melancholy, it has peaks and it has valleys, but it's not small peaks and small valleys. I mean, these things are miles apart from one another, and they change really well. The transitions within this song are really well done. You don't feel jolted, you don't feel like things are abrupt. You feel super smooth in terms of how you move from one style, from one approach within the same track to a different style, to a different approach. This makes the song, both musically and vocally, super energetic, super dynamic, very alive. But at the same time, the volatility just connects you to it, because you don't really know what's coming around the corner because of those big highs and big lows. The track can take you anywhere. It's just a song that's made of momentums, but momentums that are really well tied up to one another. This is it. Kaunis Kuolematon with Mielenvalta, out October 13th on Noble Demon. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.